Hello to everybody. Just am out here for a very quick walk because there's a storm brewing. It's pretty dry out here today. It's been sporadic rains this monsoon season. But I wanted to go into something very cool that I find super interesting. And I thought perhaps I could just fit this quick chat in on the walk, because I'm really not going to be out here long at all. Maybe 20 minutes max. Anyway, let's see. How do I want to start this? Hello. So with non-dual consciousness, what are we talking about? What is that? And what does it have to do with who you think you are? What is the relationship there? So there's obviously two topics in the dialogue, right? There's duality and non-duality, because in a way we have to describe duality in order to point to non-duality, which seems a bit contradictory, but actually it's not, because so much of the structural aspect of the world and the mind is created through the self, the me. And in non-dualism, in a way, yes, that's getting dismantled, but more importantly, it's really pointing to something deeper and something more vast and something out of the confines of the conscious mind, as clinical psychology would describe it. Because from the psychological perspective, the ego, or the me, is the conscious mind, right? It's who you think you are. It's the part of you that you're aware of. Your traits, personality, behaviors, preferences, beliefs, all that stuff. That's in the realm of the me, and that's what we refer to in modern day as ego. So non-duality comes in and says that's not who you are, right? And we click with that, right? Something deep within clicks with that. And it's kind of like suddenly this vaster reality opens up of maybe more questioning, more contemplation, more vividness, electricity to our daily living. Maybe there's a little more now to the picture than what we thought there was. And non-dualism, I'm not going to go into Neo-Advaita because this isn't the kind of video I wanted to make today. What I wanted to do is point out that when we start to question who I am not, we open up the doors, kind of a can of worms, to this whole other side of who we've suppressed, right? So we've created this ego, this false structure on kind of who we think we are and who we want to be. But in doing that, we've had to suppress a lot of parts of ourselves, deny a lot of parts of ourselves that we just don't seem suitable to the structure that we're creating here. The me that I've used to survive and the me that I've used to function. So that gets unleashed. And not a lot of teachers talk about that. It's easy to go into the Neo-Advaita total rejection of the self and describe this flowery oneness. But it's like, what the fuck do you do when you're suddenly processing a ton of trauma, a ton of dark night of the soul type qualities, massive rage, anger, grief, hopelessness, fear of abandonment, fear of death. And it's like, at that point, it's very dangerous when non-duality circles continue to deny the self, little self. It's very dangerous because this little self is actually a big self. It's this vastness of the subconscious mind, which is obviously full of collective things. I mean, the subconscious mind carries everything with it since the origins of time, the origins of consciousness. So we're actually tapping into something very ancient and very deep and very scary. Very scary. And those of you who are on this path know exactly what I'm talking about. And because as children, we've learned to survive by denying this darkness and pretending it's not there in order to get by. So we're not really equipped with the tools in many ways. Speaking of darkness, we're just not equipped with the tools necessarily. We may be if we're getting, psychology or doing some sort of mind-body practice or whatnot. But in many cases, we just simply would rather use non-duality to continue avoiding the dark side of dualism, light and dark, avoid that dark side because we just simply don't have the capacity to process the amount of trauma and the amount of disorder and chaos that the human condition comes with. And so, I do think it's important to start looking into that for yourself and to really look at what has been suppressed all this time, because it's going to come up no matter what. And if you keep denying it, and if you keep pushing it down, it becomes even more uncomfortable, and the suffering level goes even higher, like prior to what you've been identifying with as little self. Now it's kind of like, now you're identifying with the whole totality of the self, right? The light and the dark. But don't stop there, because there's still a whole level of embrace, of integration that has to occur. There has to be this willingness and this openness to no longer suppress and no longer deny the things that are coming up. And I'm talking about triggers like deep emotional states. And when you start to do this kind of work, I think people refer to it as shadow work, but I'm not sure. But basically, when you start to go into the subconscious, which actually, ultimately, the subconscious, so it makes very little accessible to the conscious mind. Conscious mind barely scratches the surface of the unconscious, right? The only way we can really do that is through either, dream work or various transcendental meditation states, or the daydreaming that we do on a day-to-day basis. That's where we can access these profoundly ancient, critical human elements that are starting to come to the surface and reveal themselves. And don't get scared from this kind of work, because ultimately you're the vastness, the totality of everything, of all things, and yet not one thing at the same time. Right? So in this world, you're not either or, you're both. So kind of been building up to this video for a while, and I still don't think I'm finished with the topic, but I do want to present that in a way that encourages you and invites you into that core essence of being, which is coming through the subconscious mind. And so, non-duality ultimately is taking a stick and shoving it right into a huge ant farm and dislodging a bunch of stuff that's been suppressed, and denied. So that's all I'm going to say on that today. And enjoy yourself wherever you are, and enjoy the path, because it's a good one.